Welcome to a world with limitless possibilities. A world where pain and suffering are matched only by the sounds of those who endure it. Welcome to your nightmare.
Welcome to your nightmare.
Hello everyone and welcome back to Nightmare. Before we get into tonight's episode, I do ask that if you do enjoy the content and the stories that you're listening to please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It really does help our show grow and get out to new listeners. And for tonight's tale, I'm going to be narrating an original story called The Possession. I hope you all enjoy. The air in the house didn't just turn cold, it turned heavy. You know that feeling when you walk into a room and you're certain someone is standing right behind you? That's how it started for Elias. In theological circles, they call this infestation. It's the stage where the entity stakes its claim on a location. It began with the smells. Not the smell of a dead mouse or a gas leak, but the distinct cloying stench of sulfur mixed with rotting meat. It would drift into the kitchen at 3:14 a.m., always the same time, and then vanish. Then came the sounds. According to the Ritual Romanum, demons often mimic familiar sounds to lower your guard. Elias heard his mother's voice calling his name from the basement. His mother has been dead for 6 years. Those are the mockery knocks, 3 of them. A distinct insult to the Holy Trinity. Elias tried to be rational. He checked the pipes. He checked the foundation. But then he found the first physical evidence. On the wall behind his bed, 3 long, jagged scratches appeared in the wallpaper. They were deep. Too deep for a human fingernail, and they were weeping. Not sap, not water. A dark viscous fluid that smelled like old copper. He wasn't just being watched anymore. He was being hunted. By the second week, the infestation became obsession. This is the psychological siege. The entity doesn't want your house. It wants your mind. It wants to break your will until you're nothing but an empty vessel. Elias stopped sleeping. When he did close his eyes, he saw things. Not dreams, but flashes of visceral horror. His own hands tearing at his throat. The family dog dismembered in the barn. Fields of black corn swaying under a blood-red moon. He lost 15 pounds in 10 days. His skin took on a gray, translucent hue. He started experiencing aversion, a documented clinical sign. He couldn't look at his grandmother's crucifix. It made his eyes sear as if he were staring into a welding torch. Then, the first gory manifestation happened. Elias was shaving. He looked into the mirror and saw his own reflection smiling, even though his actual face remained stoic. In the reflection, his skin began to bubble and peel away in wet, raw strips. He felt a sharp, stinging heat. When he looked down at the sink, it wasn't soapy water filling the basin. It was a thick, frothy slurry of bile and hair. He screamed, but no sound came out. Instead, he felt something move in his throat, a hard, cold lump. He reached into his mouth and pulled. He dragged out 3 feet of rusted barbed wire. It tore through his gums, shredding the soft tissue of his cheeks. The pain was white hot, but the bleeding stopped instantly. The entity was showing him what it could do to the flesh it now considered its own. Now we enter the final stage: possession. The facts of possession are often more terrifying than the movies. There is the xenoglossy, speaking in languages the victim has never learned. Elias, a man who barely graduated high school, began whispering in perfect ancient Sumerian. His voice didn't just change, it doubled. When he spoke, there was his own frail voice, and beneath it, a low guttural vibration that sounded like tectonic plates grinding together. His body began to undergo extraordinary strength. When the local priest, Father Miller, arrived, he found Elias huddled in the corner of the ceiling, not climbing, not holding on, just adhered. When Miller began the rite, the gore reached its zenith. Elias's body contorted. His joints didn't just bend, they snapped. The sound of his femurs cracking echoed through the room like gunshots. His skin stretched until it began to tear at the seams, the armpits, the groin, the neck, revealing not muscle and bone, but a void of shifting black shadows. Then came the paranormal effluvia. Elias opened his mouth and it didn't stop opening. His jaw unhinged with a wet pop. He began to vomit objects that were physically impossible to swallow. Sharp shards of glass, black river stones, and finally, a swarm of live, bloated botflies that crawled out from behind his eyeballs, pushing them forward until they nearly fell from their sockets. Father Miller threw the holy water. Where the droplets hit Elias's skin, it didn't just burn, it hissed and boiled. The flesh liquefying and sloughing off in a gray, gelatinous clump, exposing the pulsing blackened organs beneath. The end of a possession isn't a victory. It's an extraction. The room grew so cold that the priest's breath froze in the air, falling to the floor like tiny crystals of ice. Elias, or what was left of him, leveled a gaze at Father Miller. His eyes were no longer human. They were flat black discs, like the eyes of a shark.
We are many, and you are a man of paper.
The voice vibrated. The floorboards beneath Elias began to bleed. Not a trickle, but a geyser of hot, pressurized blood that coated the walls, the ceiling, and the crucifix Miller held. The gore was suffocating. With one final lung-shredding scream, Elias's body arched so hard his spine shattered the wooden floor beneath him. A dark, oily smoke poured from his mouth, his ears, and the wounds on his chest. It smelled of the grave and the ancient, forgotten places of the earth. When the smoke cleared, the house was silent. Elias was still there, lying in the center of the room. He was breathing, but he was empty. His eyes were wide, staring at the ceiling, forever trapped in the 1,000-yard stare of those who have seen the other side. The entity was gone, but it left its mark. The scratches on the wall remained. They never stopped weeping that dark copper-scented fluid, because the truth about possession is this: once the door is opened, it can be closed, but the lock is always broken. That is all for this episode of Nightmare. I do hope you all enjoyed this story. Again, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify as we continue to bring you stories that you enjoy. And until next time, sleep well.